The biggest secret of the silo is not what is outside. It is why the silo was built in the first place. For years, everyone inside believed the same story. Humanity destroyed the world. The outside air became deadly. The silos were created as the last shelter for survival. But what if that was never the real purpose? What if the silos were not built to save humanity? What if they were built to control it? Because when you look closely at every mystery, every rule, every punishment, and every secret hidden inside the walls, one terrifying possibility begins to appear. The silo was never designed as a home. It was designed as an experiment. And the people living inside are not survivors. They're subjects. But here's what changes everything. The creators of the silo did not just want to protect people from the outside world. They wanted to protect something from the people inside. Something so dangerous that thousands of humans had to live their entire lives underground, believing a carefully constructed lie. And the deeper we go into the story, the more obvious it becomes. The silo was not created because humanity failed. The silo was created because someone was afraid of what humanity would become. Look at what the show is actually telling us. Every major mystery follows the same pattern. Information is controlled. History is rewritten. Curiosity is treated as a crime. And anyone who gets too close to the truth is removed. That is not the behavior of a civilization trying to survive. That is the behavior of a system trying to maintain control. And this leads to the central theory behind everything. The silos were built for one purpose: to test, manipulate, and contain human society until the people inside reached a specific outcome. Not survival, not safety, a result. A controlled experiment running for generations. But before understanding why, we need to look at the first major clue. The most important clue is the one everyone sees, but almost nobody questions. The cleaning. Every person who chooses to go outside is given the same task: clean the outside sensor. At first, this seems like a punishment, a final humiliation, a way to prove that the person leaving the silo was wrong. But this is where it gets darker, because the cleaning is not random. It is a ritual, a carefully designed psychological event. Think about what happens. A person spends their entire life hearing one message: the outside is death. The outside is poison. The outside cannot be survived. Then suddenly, they step outside and see something completely different. They see a beautiful world. They see green landscapes. They see a sky that looks alive. For a brief moment, their entire reality breaks. And then they clean.
Why? Because someone wanted them to.
Someone wanted every person watching from inside the silo to see the same thing. A person who leaves the silo always walks toward the same location, always performs the same action, always falls at the same place. This is not just a punishment. It is a message. The question is, who is that message really for? The person outside? Or the thousands watching from behind the glass? This is the detail everyone missed. The cleaning does not exist to show people that the outside is dangerous. It exists to remind them that leaving is impossible. The silo does not need physical walls to keep people trapped. It uses fear. And fear is much stronger than metal. Because if people believe they cannot survive outside, they will never try to escape. But then another mystery appears. The silo does not simply hide information. It actively destroys it. Books disappear. Old records vanish. The past becomes illegal. People are punished for asking questions about previous generations.
Why?
Because knowledge is the one thing that can destroy the entire system. A person who knows the truth becomes dangerous. A person who understands history becomes impossible to control. And that explains one of the strangest rules inside the silo. The ban on relics. The objects from the past are treated like dangerous weapons. But why would a simple old object threaten an entire underground civilization? Because objects remember. A forgotten machine. An old photograph. A piece of technology. A document from before the silo. Every one of these things creates the same question. Why? And the people controlling the silo cannot allow people to ask why. Because once someone starts questioning one rule, every rule begins to collapse. That is why the silo's greatest enemy is not rebellion. It is curiosity. And this connects directly to Juliette. Because Juliette is not dangerous because she breaks rules. She is dangerous because she thinks differently. She looks at the world around her and notices contradictions. She sees that the official explanation does not match reality. And that makes her the exact type of person the silo was designed to eliminate. But here's what changes everything. What if Juliette was never supposed to discover the truth? What if the entire system was built around preventing someone exactly like her from appearing? Because the silo seems prepared for rebellion. It seems prepared for questions. It seems prepared for people searching for answers. That means this has happened before. Maybe many times. The system is too organized. The lies are too carefully maintained.
The rules are too specific.
This is not a government reacting to a problem. This is a machine built from previous failures. And that brings us to the most terrifying possibility. The silo may not be a place created after the world ended. It may be a place created because someone knew the world would end. Someone planned this. Someone designed every level, every rule, every restriction, every secret. The silo is not an accident. It is a blueprint. A blueprint for controlling humanity after disaster. But if that is true, then the biggest question is not who built the silo. The bigger question is, what were they preparing humanity for? Because maybe the outside world is not the real threat. Maybe the real threat is what happens when humans are finally allowed to know the truth. And that is where the mystery becomes much darker. Because the silo might not be hiding the outside world from its people. It might be hiding its people from the outside world. And in the next part, we have to examine the evidence that reveals the true purpose behind the silo system. The experiments, the hidden messages, and why Bernard may not be protecting the silo. He may be protecting the reason it exists. The more we examine the silo, the more one terrifying pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The rules were never created because people were naturally dangerous. The rules were created because someone already knew what people would do when they discovered the truth. The silo is not a random underground city. It is a controlled environment built around one simple idea. Control the information and you control the people. But the question is, why would anyone need such extreme control? Why erase history? Why separate generations? Why create a society where curiosity itself becomes a threat? Because the people who built the silo were not only trying to survive a disaster, they were trying to prevent humanity from repeating something. And this is where it gets darker. The silo may not be humanity's shelter. It may be humanity's test. A test designed to answer one question. Can humans rebuild civilization without destroying themselves again? Because if that is true, then every person inside the silo has been part of an experiment for generations. Every law, every punishment, every secret, every controlled piece of information. Everything exists for a reason. Look at the structure of the silo itself. It is divided into levels. Different jobs, different social classes, different responsibilities. At first, it looks like a practical design. A giant underground city where everyone has a role. But there's something strange about it. The silo does not just organize people. It separates them. Mechanical workers rarely interact with higher levels. Security operates separately from regular citizens. The upper levels hold power. The lower levels hold the physical foundation of the entire system. Everyone depends on everyone else. But nobody truly understands the entire machine. And that is the perfect environment for control. Because a person who only knows one small part of a system cannot challenge the entire system. This is the genius of a silo. Nobody is forced to believe one massive lie. Instead, everyone is given a small piece of reality. And when those pieces are separated, the truth becomes almost impossible to discover. That's not the real mystery. The real mystery is why the silo needs this much control after hundreds of years. If the outside world is truly deadly, why continue hiding history? Why continue banning knowledge? Why continue treating questions as dangerous? A temporary emergency becomes understandable, but a lie maintained for generations? That suggests something much bigger. Someone is not afraid of what happened in the past. Someone is afraid of what people will discover about the past. And that difference changes everything. because it means the greatest secret in the silo may not be about the world outside. It may be about the people who created this world inside. Now look at Bernard. For many people, Bernard appears to be just another authority figure. A man protecting order. A person who believes rules are necessary. But what if Bernard's role is much more complicated? What if he is not simply maintaining the silo? What if he is protecting an ancient system that he barely understands himself? Because Bernard's greatest weapon is not violence. It is information. He knows things other people do not. He understands the history that has been erased. He knows which questions are dangerous. He knows which people are becoming threats. And most importantly, he knows that the silo cannot survive if the truth spreads. But here's what changes everything. What if Bernard is not the creator of the lie? What if Bernard is another prisoner? A prisoner who has been given the responsibility of guarding the cage? Because that is the most disturbing possibility. The people running the silo may also be trapped by it. They may believe they are protecting humanity while actually protecting a system that has existed for reasons they cannot fully see. And this connects to one of the biggest mysteries, the outside world. For years, everyone inside believes the same thing. The outside is dead. The outside is poison. The outside means certain death. But then we see something that changes the entire conversation. The images shown to the people inside are not what they appear to be. The reality they see through the screens is manipulated. The view of the outside world is controlled. And this is the detail everyone missed. The silo does not simply hide information. It creates reality. It does not just tell people what to believe. It shows them what to believe. That is much more powerful, because a person can question words. But when they see something with their own eyes, they trust it. The creators of the silo understood human psychology. They understood that perception controls behavior. If people believe the outside is dangerous, they will never leave. If they believe the silo is their only home, they will protect it, even if the silo is the thing controlling them. But why would the creators go so far? Why create a fake reality? Why manipulate thousands of people for generations? Because the experiment requires obedience. The silo needs people who follow rules, people who accept limits, people who do not destroy the system before the experiment is complete. And that brings us back to Juliette. Because Juliette represents the one variable the silo cannot control.
Truth.
She does not accept explanations without evidence. She does not fear forbidden questions. She does not believe authority automatically equals truth. And that makes her dangerous. Not because she wants power. Not because she wants revenge. But because she wants understanding. And in a world built on controlled information, understanding is rebellion. But this is where the theory becomes even bigger. The deeper we look into the silo, the more one terrifying idea starts making sense. The silo was never meant to be a permanent home. It was always meant to be a process designed to create a specific type of human being. One that could survive. One that could obey. One that could rebuild. But most importantly, one that would not repeat the mistakes that destroyed the old world. And this is where everything changes. Because if the silo is an experiment, then every person inside has been part of a much bigger plan. Their entire lives, their beliefs, their fears, their relationships, even their conflicts. Everything may have been shaped by the people who designed this system. The silo is not just a building. It is a machine. A machine designed to study human behavior under extreme conditions. How much control can people accept? How long can people live without knowing the truth? How much freedom will people sacrifice for safety? These are not accidental questions. These are the questions the silo seems designed to answer. And the darkest part? The experiment may have already succeeded. Because the people inside have done exactly what the system wanted. They created their own prison. They enforce their own rules. They protect their own lies. The silo does not need guards on every floor. It does not need soldiers watching every person. The system has trained people to protect itself. That is the true power of the silo. Control is strongest when people believe they are choosing it. But here's what changes everything. What if the silo was not created because humanity could not be trusted? What if it was created because humanity was too dangerous when it had unlimited freedom? Think about the old world. We know something happened. Something so devastating that humanity had to disappear underground. But the silo never focuses only on the disaster. It focuses on preventing people from remembering. And that suggests the event itself may not be the biggest secret. The biggest secret may be the reason it happened. Because if people discovered the truth about the old world, they might understand why the silo was created. And that knowledge could destroy everything. This is the detail everyone missed. The silo does not fear people discovering that the outside is safe. It fears people discovering why they were placed inside. Because those are two completely different mysteries. A person escaping the silo only changes one life. But a person discovering the original purpose of the silo could change thousands of lives. That is why the system reacts so strongly. That is why information is more dangerous than weapons. Because the truth does not need permission. Once people know it, they cannot unknow it. Now look at Juliette's journey from a different perspective. At first, she appears to be searching for answers about one person.
About George.
About the secrets hidden in mechanical. But that search becomes something much bigger. Because every answer creates a new question. Every secret reveals another layer. And eventually, she is no longer investigating a crime. She is investigating the entire foundation of her world. That is why Juliette is such a threat. She does not just break rules. She exposes why those rules exist. And systems built on hidden truths cannot survive people who understand them. But there is another possibility. A much darker one. What if Juliette's discovery was expected? What if the people who created the silo knew someone would eventually reach this point? What if rebellion is not a failure of the system? What if rebellion is part of the system? Because think about it. A perfect prison would not allow anyone to question. But a perfect experiment would need someone to question. It would need someone brave enough to challenge the rules. Someone intelligent enough to uncover the truth. Someone who could prove whether humanity had changed. And that leads to a terrifying theory. Maybe the silo was never built to keep everyone trapped forever. Maybe it was built to find the first person who could leave. The first person who could see the truth and survive it. Look at what the show is actually telling us. The silo has always been obsessed with one thing. Who deserves to know? Not everyone. Not even the people in power. Only certain people are allowed to understand the bigger picture. That means knowledge itself is the final level of the silo. The deeper you go physically, the deeper you go into the truth. And perhaps that is not a coincidence. The silo is built like a mystery. Each level hides another secret. Each person holds another piece. Each generation moves closer to an answer. Until someone finally reaches the bottom. But what happens when they do? What happens when someone discovers the original purpose? What happens when someone finds the people who created the system? Because the answer may not be freedom. The answer may be another layer. A bigger experiment. A bigger world. A bigger threat. And this is where the theory reaches its most disturbing conclusion. The silos were not built to preserve the last survivors of humanity. They were built to preserve humanity itself. But preservation does not always mean protection. Sometimes preservation means isolation. Sometimes it means control. Sometimes it means keeping something alive until the right moment arrives. And maybe that moment is finally here. Maybe Juliette is not just discovering the truth about the silo. Maybe she is reaching the final stage of the experiment. The stage where humanity must finally prove whether it deserves to return. But one question remains. If the people who built the silo were preparing humanity for a future, why did they make sure nobody inside would ever know about it? Because maybe the biggest secret of all is this. The silo was never built to hide humanity from the outside world. It was built to hide the outside world from humanity. And if that is true, then the moment those doors finally open, the real experiment will begin.